Ah, hello there. I see you've caught me in one of my favorite pastimes, reading fancy dancy books with fancy dancy words. Second of none, of course, to finding new and creative ways to ignore the riffraff and rabble and wearing monocles. Well, anyway, welcome to Fernside Talks with Christopher Bilham, where today we shall be discussing none other than fear itself. An old, ancient, and primal instinct, this emotional response is believed to be the evolutionary creation of dealing with stressful situations in order to increase our reproductive success. For many years, this was believed to be the sole responsibility of a part of the brain called the amygdala. The amygdala are two almond-shaped clusters of nuclei located inside of the temporal lobe. Although the amygdala is indeed a crucial and fundamental part of our emotional response to fear and behavior control, it is not the only player in this story. As recent studies at the University of Iowa have suggested, there are indeed three different types of fear that originate in three different circuits of the brain. The first being what we consider the most normal or predatory fear. This has been kind of our standard idea of the fight or flight response, and it has been found to originate in the standard defense circuits that we have often associated with it to be, and a primary part of the amygdala itself. Second to that is the fear of dealing with other members of the same species, such as a particularly aggressive male or a very angry woman. Now, this part has been found to originate inside of the reproductive circuit of the human brain, completely outside of the amygdala. Although the amygdala does indeed control and regulate the behavior response of this, it does not actually create the emotional stimuli for the fear, but rather processes it. And finally, we have the fear of pain, an old and sad and dangerous feeling that originates in a completely different part of the brain itself. Now, what does this mean, you might ask? Well, we've come across this rather baffling problem where the more we learn about fear in the amygdala, the less we seem to actually know of it. So, how do we sum up our traditional fight or flight response? Well, it's quite simple. It's actually a very complex part involving many different parts of your brain, including the cortex, your temporal lobes, and your brainstem. Of course, the amygdala itself, and possibly some other parts, as it's still not quite that well understood. But one thing is true, the amygdala deals with all the processing. It is the part of the brain that inputs and deals with the sensory data and determines our behavioral response. This is our fight or flight. Now, we know this because there have been examples where mice with either damaged or purposely inhibited amygdalas have had different behavioral responses than expected. For example, a passive mouse that usually would run or freeze in front of a dangerous or stressful stimuli, with a damaged amygdala would rear up or aggressively attack the stimuli. This is quite clear evidence that the amygdala's main purpose is behavioral response, whereas the entire system itself is rather complex, involving the entirety of the brain. I hope this has left a rather insightful understanding of how the fear response works, and I hope to see you for another session of yacht talks and how to avoid taxes. Cheerios!